Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm here in the studio with Lysetta Hurge-Putnam, who is Executive Director of Independence House. Independence House here in Hyannis works with survivors of domestic abuse in a number of different ways. Lysetta, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Let's start by giving people more of an idea of what Independence House does, because I know you work with people in a number of different ways.
Sure. So Independence House, as you said, works with survivors of domestic violence, but we also work with survivors of sexual violence as well. So our mission does address both of those issues. And we've been on Cape Cod. We're actually in our 36th year here. It's pretty amazing. A lot of it because of the support of our community, of course. And we provide a variety of support, resources, referrals to survivors. So, for example, when we think of domestic violence survivors, that affects 1 in 4 women nationally. So on Cape Cod, we do see quite a few people who are affected by domestic violence, and the statistic is the same for sexual violence. And the work that we do with survivors is tailored to their individual situation. So it's not cookie cutter. It's not one size fits all. So for a particular survivor, there might be one that might be single, or they might have a family. So that person may need something like a safe place to stay, which I believe is traditionally what people think about when they think about domestic violence services. And we do provide that. We can connect a person with a place to stay. We have safe homes, but we can also help them to access more long-term shelter. We assist with things like safety planning, helping them to figure out how to remain safe. And that's also individual for each person's situation. So that's on an individual basis, but we also provide group support with the help of trained domestic and sexual violence advocates, of course, along with other people who have been in that situation. One of the pieces of work that we do that maybe we're less known for, but we've certainly been doing it for almost 10 years at this point, we work with children who witness domestic violence. There's been quite a bit of research that demonstrate that children who are witnessing domestic violence at home do have an impact socially, emotionally, and cognitively. So our work with children is intended to help them to sort of process what they see at home, to help them to understand that and to know that it's not their fault, and to have themselves their own safety plans to be able to identify safe adults and in their own way understand what's happened in their home. And some children may even be identified as having trauma. There are lots of kids that get identified sometimes as having attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity or ADHD. And it's not to say they don't have it, but some of those symptoms may also be connected to domestic violence. So we obviously want to address the family. So, the person who's the victim, which is, in our case, typically we see the mom and the kids. We also work with teens. We have a teen dating violence program, and that's for any teen on Cape Cod, anywhere from the ages of 13 up through around 19. The child witness to violence program I just discussed is for 6 to 12, although we will work with younger kids depending on the child and the family. Our teen program addresses, kids who might be in unsafe dating relationships, and that could range anywhere from emotional to physical as well. A variety of teens do experience, and also what we call tweens, who are, I guess, as you were dating, do experience violence or inappropriate behaviors within those relationships. So again, we work with those teens to really understand what healthy relationships are all about and how to have healthy relationships with each other and how also to be safe. With connecting with teens, our organization also does what we call primary prevention work. And primary prevention really is defined as addressing something before it actually occurs. So a lot of what I just described is intervention. So our prevention program, we're actually working with 3 high schools on Cape Cod on a long-term basis, where we have a curriculum that we're using with the school. It's the Mentors in Violence Prevention program, and we work with teens in the school on bystander intervention and how to prevent violence, how to be a support, how to teach their peers about violence prevention and being an active bystander. Then, of course, we have a court advocacy program where we have staff that's stationed in all the courts on Cape Cod, and that specifically helps any survivor of domestic or sexual violence who's coming in and they're in need of a restraining order, and our staff helps them to sort of navigate the court system. And we do outreach and education in the community, where, of course, we want, a little bit of what I'm doing today, but also just in general, we are just in the community wherever we can be, so that not only do people who might need our services can gain access to us, but also other professionals in the community. We're happy to do training. We have done training and just provide information about what we do. And we do a lot.
Such a wide range of
Yes.
things you do and different populations you work with. It was occurring to me when you were talking about the young children, that children that age who witness domestic violence must almost need to be reprogrammed, I would think, to be told that that's really not the right way that people should treat people. Is that part of what you have to do, too, when that happens?
Right. We help them first. Absolutely. It's really understanding what a healthy relationship is between two people, to adults, but also between peers, because sometimes children might, sort of respond to the violence they've seen at home by replicating that behavior with others. So yes, we do talk about it in a way that's respectful, obviously, to their parents. One of the things that I also do want to mention, you said we deal with a wide range, and we actually are also focusing more on, as you know, we all know that Cape Cod has a very large elder population, the oldest in the state. So we are also doing work. We just started a new program with the town of Yarmouth, where we have started a program for people who are experiencing domestic violence in later life. So we also work with people on that spectrum as well.
And we do see that coming up in the news every
Yes.
so often. Now, how did Independence House get started? And I was surprised when you said 30 plus years,
Yeah.
a long time. Tell me how it started.
Independence House is a local homegrown organization, and this will be the 36th year, so 35 years ago, women from Cape Cod, 4 women who recognized at the time that there was a growing domestic violence on Cape Cod, and they got together because there really were no resources available for women on Cape Cod, as it was back at that time. It was pretty typical, and they were active, and they really, I like to say, became game changers and started Independence House with a telephone, really, and a kitchen table, basement, hotline, and that's how the agency started. And that we still have our hotline today, which I did not talk about up front, but it's such a part of what we do. It's a 24-hour hotline, 365 days a year, and that's sort of how they started to give support to women in the community.
The hotline, as you say, is how it all started, and still probably one of the main uses of
Yes.
the organization. Maybe you should give that number right now.
Sure. It's 1-800-439-6507, and the hotline is one of the first ways that people do find us. Yes.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm talking with Lysetta Hurge-Putnam of Independence House, and we're talking about the issue of domestic violence. Now, how big of an issue is domestic violence on the Cape? Is it a bigger issue here than it is elsewhere, or do you have any way of knowing that, really?
I don't think I have any way of knowing, but what I would say is that statistically speaking, the rate is the same. It's no different. And I get that question a lot, and I'm not sure why, but because Cape Cod is, aside from the fact that it's a little bit older, it is a representation of our country nationally. So some of the same. It's not it's a crime or a social problem that's been around for a very long time, whether it be on Cape Cod or just nationally. So we see the same issues that the rest of the country sees.
And I guess what people always say about domestic violence is that it is one crime that officials believe is wildly underreported. Is that right? It is completely underreported.
In fact, if you were to get, if I had someone from the police department, any of our police departments sitting here, we would never do this, but in terms of exchanging information. But I'm sure that there are people that we see that the police may not see, and vice versa. They might go to the police and not come to Independence House. And in addition to that, there are people who just never seek help, or it takes them a long time before. So it is very underreported, and there are a lot of reasons for that.
And we should talk about that a little bit, because that's sort of at the crux of domestic violence, really.
Right. It could take me another hour to talk about all the reasons, but for some folks, obviously, they're very isolated. They believe that they're the only ones that it's happening to. And I know everyone's going to say, that can't be true. There's so much in the news. There's so much on social media. And yes, all of that is true. But I ask people to think about if you've ever been in any kind of a difficult situation and where you believe you're the only one that's experiencing that. Plus, that can also be part of the abuse, where the victim is made to feel isolated. She feels isolated, that she's the only one that's going through this, or in some cases it could be a he. So it's difficult, but there are lots of other reasons. Some people stay in a domestic violence relationship because they really don't know or believe that there are other options available to them. It's not simply, some people say, well, why don't they just leave? Well, some people can just leave and others cannot just leave, because there are many things to consider for the victim, and it is one of the most dangerous times for a person when they decide to leave. That is often when they might get killed or are seriously injured. So it has to be carefully planned. Sometimes there are religious reasons, sometimes there are pressures from the community, and quite frankly, some victims are worried about repercussions upon their family, upon themselves. They're not sure what sort of response they will get in certain systems. So there are, I could say more, there are a myriad of reasons. And for some people, leaving, they may take as many as 7 times. For some, it's 1 time. And for some, leaving they don't see it as an option. So they look for other solutions. And for most victims who are in a marriage or a long-term relationship, they have families, really what they want is for the violence to stop, not necessarily for their relationship to end. So we work respectfully with all of the folks that come to our organization to really understand and help them to develop a plan that's best for them.
And I guess in that latter case, the violence starts small and maybe something that people wouldn't necessarily think of as domestic violence, and it sort of escalates and increases maybe over many years, months or years, and people don't realize that they've gotten to that situation that's unhealthy. Do you find that?
Domestic violence, that's a really great point. I'm glad you said that, because I think the word violence is people do get hurt and injured, but it's a little bit of a misnomer, because domestic violence is not only about physical violence, it's about emotional, psychological, and violence as well, and financial control. So imagine being in the early stages of a relationship, whether it be a marriage or a dating situation, and your partner loses his or her temper. You're driving along in the car, you're having an argument, the partner reaches over, they do something untoward, inappropriate. Maybe they grab your arm or something of that nature to get control. and it doesn't feel right, that feels really uncomfortable, and you're thinking, this isn't okay, but then your partner says, I am so sorry, I don't know what came over me, oh my God, I just lost it, please forgive me. And you do, and maybe nothing happens again for a few months. And then the next time you have another argument, and maybe it goes one step further, maybe this time it does get to be a push. But again, maybe you've been together by this time, maybe you're newlyweds, you've been together a couple years, and you think, we just got married. I love this person. They're sorry. And you get seduced into thinking it's okay. And then it passes the point of seduction and forgiveness, but the point where it's become a pattern in the relationship, and all the fear is there, and you start to think there is no way out. So it is important, I think, for people who might not be in a domestic violence relationship, who know people who are in that situation, to be able to provide whether it be friendship support or family support, and to help that victim to understand that you are there for them, and to help them to understand that there is a way out, and that there are resources available, and that there is a solution if they want that support from you, and give them that support.
Now, you have some big events coming up having to do with raising awareness about domestic violence.
So February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, so we are actually running an art contest to get kids from across Cape Cod to think about healthy relationships. So we're asking them to submit artwork to Independence House to our address in Hyannis. It's for middle and high school students. We will be displaying the artwork at a gallery on February 26th from 6 to 8 at the Hilton by Doubletree in Hyannis. And if they want more information about that, there's information on our website. But I think one of the things that's the most exciting about this is that we're going to have a dance and a special guest speaker, Malcolm Astley. And if people recognize that name, Malcolm Astley is the father of a young woman, a high school student, who was killed by her high school boyfriend. He's a very powerful speaker, and really is an example of someone who's really triumphed over a horrible, horrible situation. And by talking about his daughter's experience and his family's experience, is helping teens and their families and just the public in general. It's a free event.
Anything else you'd like to add about domestic violence for our listeners?
Just that if there's anyone that's listening that believes that they're in a domestic violence situation, also sexual assault, and has questions or concerns, please visit our website. We have a lot of resources on our website, or contact our hotline. There are no appointments necessary. And I think one thing I neglected to say, which is very important, is we charge nothing for our services. So we never want anyone to think they cannot call us or come to us. They can walk in to our agency at 160 Bassett Lane. That is one of our locations, but we also have locations in Provincetown, Orleans, and Falmouth.
And unfortunately, we are out of time. I've been talking to Lysetta Hurge-Putnam, who's from Independence House, about domestic violence. And Lysetta, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.